Hey, have you heard of the EU-Mercosur trade deal? You probably have, as this agreement signed last year between the EU and a trading bloc of South American countries has gathered significant opposition from civil society. However, do you understand why farmers have strongly criticized the current deal, even though we have supported other trade agreements? Reason 1. The EU-Mercosur trade deal is unfair for EU farmers and for EU consumers. The EU-Mercosur trade deal is beneficial for other economic sectors, such as the automotive industry, but these benefits have been obtained in return for concessions in other sectors, especially agriculture. As it stands, this deal will have substantial impact on the kind of agricultural production that we want in Europe. Let's take beef, for example. Today, the EU imports 262,700 tons of beef from Mercosur, mostly consisting of what professionals call high-value cuts. With the new deal, the EU will concede additional preferential access to 99,000 tons of beef at a reduced duty. For the European Commission, this is acceptable, as it represents only 1.2% of our overall beef production. However, a closer look at the data tells a much different story. When a farmer sells a cow, he is actually selling a number of different cuts. For a beef producer, 8% of the weight of a cow is represented by high-value cuts. These best parts of the animal bring approximately 30% of the market returns for beef producers. This top market is also way smaller. It represents about 1 million tons a year in Europe. After the deal is implemented with Mercosur, overall imports of high-value cuts will represent almost 30% of EU production. This deal will transfer the bargaining power to third countries, lower the overall price, and it will lead to the replacement of at least 2 million suckler cows in Europe. As a comparison, this is more than the total number of heads of cattle in 16 EU beef producer countries. Reason 2. The EU-Mercosur trade deal will have cumulative impacts on sensitive sectors. The EU-Mercosur deal is not the only bilateral trade agreement between the EU and third countries. The European Union has implemented major trade agreements with 62 partners and is negotiating a lot more. When adding them, one on top of the other, one can clearly expect complex cumulative effects that could have severe consequences on key sectors. Let's take the example of poultry. Currently, the EU imports around 800,000 tons of poultry meat every year from Brazil, Argentina, Ukraine, China, and Thailand. The EU-Mercosur deal would allow 180,000 tons of imports duty-free. To give you an idea of the sheer magnitude of this concession, this would mean that every week we will replace 6 million chickens produced under high EU quality and health standards with Brazilian chickens, the quality and safety of which we have no control over. Every year, these imports would equal the production of Finland, Sweden, and Denmark combined, and the European Commission is still negotiating with Thailand, Chile, and other partners. Poultry is not the only sensitive sector that will be affected by some of these cumulative impacts. Rice, orange juice, honey, sugar beets, and beef will suffer from similar effects. Reason 3. The EU-Mercosur trade deal will reinforce a double standards policy. To understand this point, let's take the example of the sugar production also included in the EU-Mercosur trade deal. In Europe, the sugar beet sector is currently suffering from very low prices and deep crisis with factory closures. At the same time, EU producers must follow the strictest production standards in the world. With the tax-free quota considered in the Mercosur agreement, Europe will accept sugar and ethanol with lower standards of production at very competitive prices. In Europe, dissemination of good practices have ensured that 90% of sugar beet area is now under certification schemes that ensure a very high sustainability of sugar beet. While in Brazil, less than 10% of the cane industry is covered by basic certification schemes. European sugar beet is grown in rotation on around 11 hectares per farm on average. Sugarcane, on the other hand, is grown on monoculture farms of 150 hectares to 1,500 hectares per farm in Brazil. In addition, Brazil uses 27 active substances in insecticides and herbicides for its sugarcane production that are banned in Europe. Brazil also grows GMOs, which have not been authorized in Europe. Finally, in Europe, sugar beet production does not put pressure on our sustainably managed forests. In Brazil, however, deforestation during the final 5 months of 2019 hit the highest level since 2006. The question is crystal clear. Do you really want to import the type of agriculture we don't want in Europe? There is still room to get a fairer and more balanced deal with Mercosur when it comes to agriculture. Affects the principles of the EU Green Deal and Paris Climate Agreement. The choice is now in the hands of European member states and the European Parliament. We rely on policymakers and EU citizens to promote our European model of production, and you can always rely on EU farmers and cooperatives to innovate, evolve, and enhance that model.